Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Self Publishing Tips and Tricks Show, a series designed to give you insight into the world of self publishing and marketing your books. I'm Ben Pick, and I'm joined by my co hosts.
I'm Morgan Lee.
And I'm Shannon, writing under the pen name SD Huston.
And we're here today with Sako Tumi, also known as Cass Voit. We're going to ask her questions about her self publishing journey and how she markets her books. But before we jump into the interview, do either of you have any updates or points of interest?
The only thing I have coming up is I'm still planning on getting books 2 and 3 of my trilogy out by the end of quarter 2. It's looking like that still might happen. I might have to push it back to the beginning of quarter 3. Not sure yet, but that's coming out. So
Awesome. So as of recording of the show, when this show comes out April 15th, we'll still be exchanging some chapters between myself and Morgan for my third book. And I'm hoping that we'll be almost done with that because it goes to my editor May 1st. So actually, we will be done at that point. I will be doing editing on what you have given me. So, But one big thing that will be happening at this point in my life is that we will have the first annual AuthorTube writing conference on YouTube for writers to come join during lots of live events of writers and writers who have published talking about their tips and what works for them. So we'll have signups open at that time for anybody who wants to actually present as well. So that's going to be awesome. And both my co-hosts here, Ben and Morgan, you guys will also be moderators for the AWC, the AuthorTube Writing Conference. So I'm going to be very excited about that and what's going on at that point. So yay.
Yeah, I can't wait for that to happen. As for me, I'm going to be having my 1 year anniversary on YouTube. So it's going to be April 19th. That's a Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a live stream. So come join in. Now let's talk about our guest author today. Sako Tumi is a horror and thriller writer based out of the Washington, D.C. area. She can be found on the internet as either Sako Tumi or Psycho Sako, and she has 2 self-published books. Her graphic design degree gives her pre-press, market, and brand herself as well as her books, and she loves to use these skills to help other writers through her YouTube channel. Welcome, Sako Tumi. Would you please take a moment to introduce yourself or to elaborate on anything which I didn't necessarily include?
I think you covered it pretty well. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, let's jump right into those questions. So before we go into the self-publishing tips and tricks themselves, what made you want to start writing?
2 things. One, I had a lot of support as a child from my parents and from my teachers and stuff like that to write and to pursue writing as like a profession. But I decided not to do that until I was well into my adulthood. And then 2, there was a book by a lady named Nancy Collins called Sunglasses After Dark. And that like set the tone for my writing from then on. And I must have been 14 years old when I found this book. So like she's my favorite author. Sunglasses After Dark is one of my favorite books ever. And it inspired me to pursue writing because if I enjoyed that writing, obviously there were thousands of other people who were enjoying it as well. So I was like, I'm going to write this train too.
So what was your very piece of published work and what made you decide to go into self-publishing?
I'm pretty sure it was either a short story or a poem. It was when I was in high school. My teachers had this habit of submitting my work to published papers and published magazines and stuff like that, contests and whatnot. And so I would just get random ribbons and have no idea that my stuff was sent off. So I have no idea what piece that was. I have no idea what it was submitted to, but I gained a lot of support via my teachers because of the work that they were submitting.
Such a bad habit for your teachers to have. So what helped you make the decision to self-publish versus going down the traditional route?
So I started off with Hope's Chest, right? Hope's Chest is technically speaking fan fiction. And so it's set in the world of darkness. And White Wolf has a fan label that you can actually publish under. So I was writing this stuff for my own well-being. I was writing it basically to RP with myself. And I was so confident with the end product that I was like, I need to share this. I think other World of Darkness people would enjoy the hell out of this story. So that's why I went into self-publishing. If I could, I would love to be picked up by White Wolf to do books in the future, traditionally. But the odds of that happening are like, so that's where I'm at with my self-publishing.
Aside from White Wolf, would you consider traditionally publishing elsewhere?
There's the chance if they find one of my pieces and they decide that they want to publish it, that I've self-published on Amazon or whatever, like that I haven't set in the World of Darkness, then sure, I'd be open to it. But I'm not gonna like query stuff. I'm not gonna. I might find an agent just because, being self-published, you might want an agent anyway. But I'm more inclined to do the self-publishing just because I like having control over my publishing journey as opposed to traditional, which like handles a lot of the stuff on their own and then leaves me to do all the marketing. I'm just more inclined to do self-publishing.
So you talked about who inspired you to write, but did anyone or anything in particular like set the way for you to self-publishing? Like anyone you looked up to in self-publishing, maybe that kind of pushed you into that?
You know, I think it was AuthorTube in general that made me more confident in self-publishing. It was like Bethany Votaw and BC Brown and a bunch of other amazing authors on AuthorTube, that really like alleviated some misconceptions that I had about self-publishing and really encouraged me to pursue it, as because I take my writing so seriously, you know, that to really pursue it as a vocation.
So to clarify for our listeners who may not know what AuthorTube is, it is a subset of the population of YouTube who are writers that you can find on YouTube, and they are a very inspiring bunch for sure. I've found so much that I've really learned from them. And you said that they helped to clarify some of your misconceptions, but what was one misconception you had before that was clarified?
Lack of quality was one of the misconceptions that I had, but because my experiences with self-published work on Amazon had been not so great. And it wasn't until I found BC's work and I found Bethany Votaw's work and I found Kent Shawn's work and Colin Clark, I felt so much better about writing that was coming out from self-published authors, and that the misconception just needed to be like, say, washed out from my psyche.
You're describing working with or self-publishing within Amazon. So what makes publishing in, say, Vella different from other mediums?
I am looking at releasing a paranormal romance through Kindle Vella, doing the serial thing, though I intend on having an end. It's a good way to branch out and grab more readers. Because if they find me on Vella, they're more inclined to find me, especially these days with Amazon actually being like, hey, we have a Vella.
So you haven't gone into Kindle Vella yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Because I heard some other writers say that Amazon's not really kind of pushing their Kindle Vella yet. So in your opinion, do you think Kindle Vella is essential for kind of leading the readers to your published works, like through KDP?
Not essential. It's just another avenue that they could take, to kind of branch out and make their material more accessible. And if they find me in one place, they can find me in another.
So you have published books out and you're considering venturing into the Velo realm. Do you do any other type of writing besides long formats?
I love role playing via text. It's kind of like a chain story with other writers, which is like super gratifying for me. I like being the conflict, so I am very. It's very therapeutic, I think, to RP with other writers. Can you say that question one more time?
So you're publishing the long format with your books, and you're looking into going to Vella, which is a serial format. And I didn't know, do you do any flash fiction pieces?
I do. I love doing horror flash. I have them all on a blog on my website, but I'm thinking of making videos with like audio versions of said flash fiction. I
And that's
was
supposed to be
inspired
fictional.
by Laura Nettles. Her work is really inspiring to me. So she went through this like phase where she wrote a ton of flash, and it inspired me to pick up the art myself.
And you plan to publish those on your YouTube channel then?
Hmm.
Okay, awesome.
Cool, cool, cool. So from your website, it appears you have 3 published works. The first Damned Hitman series, Hope's Chest, and the recent Flambeau. Is that all correct? Is there anything else that we are missing that we could help promote? Or
Actually, the first book to the Damn Hitman series is not out yet.
Mm,
I'm still working on that. But Hope's Chest is available and Flambeau is indeed available. I am juggling a couple of projects in the future. I do hope to release something in May. That will be the next thing down the chute.
so I'll be very close after this comes out.
Mhm.
So, what led to your decision to write under a pen name?
I do so much under Sako Tumi. Sako Tumi is my pen name for my art and my graphic design and my photography and stuff like that. My belly dance. I felt like my writing deserved its own name, and if I were to graduate to originally, if I was going to graduate to actually writing under Sako Tumi, that would be like on Amazon and stuff like that. But I decided just to keep running with Cass Voit if I was going to keep writing urban fantasy, horror, thriller stuff.
Okay, so I'm so glad you answered about your first book of the Damned Hitman series, because it looked like on your website that you had it already, but I guess I didn't see that correctly. So and it looked like you have like a 6-book planned series on that. So and do you plan to publish that under Cass Voit as well then?
I do. I do. The Damned Hitman series will be a fast release if I can rewrite everything. I actually lost everything in a hard drive crash last year, which super hurts. I had 3 of the 6 books written, and so I basically have to rewrite everything, which my nanos are pretty much dedicated to for the next like year and a half. So yeah, that's something coming down the chute. I intend on doing like 1 book a quarter, and then like in between books there would be like a short story or a series of short stories that can kind of like keep people engaged, keep people reading, and keep me kind of eyeballs deep in the series.
And flash fiction on your YouTube channel.
Indeed.
I am so, so sorry. I had heard you say that before, but I didn't realize it was 3 full books. I mean, that is one of the most devastating things for a writer, and I can't even imagine what that must have been like.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible.
What went into the decision to make Hope's Chest only available to buy from Storyteller's Vault versus Flambeau, which is available on Amazon?
It really is a matter of rights. I use a lot of terminology and a lot of character design templates from World of Darkness to build that story, and I use a political structure that is very much so used in their universe. So I really wanted to pay homage to the universe that I was borrowing from, and for them to have Dark Pack, which is the label under which I could publish my fan works and release my internet games and like all of that jazz. Like, I don't know if you guys knew, but I run a Mage the Ascension game on Thursdays, which I edit and upload, which is also released under Dark Pack as well. So writing under Dark Pack, I if I write in the universe, I want to pay proper homage to the universe that I'm borrowing from, and if I write outside of that universe, then I'll go ahead and release on Amazon.
So, from your point of view, what has been some of your greatest publishing successes?
Hope's Chest was pretty successful when it first came out. It was number 1 in the top 10 releases on Storyteller's Vault for 3 weeks, and then I remained among the top 10 for another like 9 weeks. So, and I made my money back for the most part. So, I would call that a success to gain more readers and to actually cover my expenses when because I like to pay for my editing and pay for the hard copies and stuff like that.
I think you checked all those boxes that we hope as indie authors that we can find as successes for our book, is to find those readers and to make back the money that we spent producing the book. So with that in mind, what has been your least favorite part of your indie journey?
Probably waiting on beta readers and then deciphering what to take and into account and what not to take into account. Sometimes are nuances that they're not quite understanding that take place in US society. Like I'll have a beta reader like based out of South Africa or Britain or something like that, and there are social nuances that they don't quite understand. So I have to like weed out what was good and what is very subjective.
Are you comfortable discussing any publishing missteps or something that you would have rather done differently?
I spent too much money on Facebook ads. Um, my audience on Facebook ads was actually very small, and I spent more than $20, and it ended up spamming my content on their pages, and I got accused of spamming and being repetitive. And it wasn't me posting the stuff, it was like Google ads and Facebook ads that were doing it. So it was that was definitely a misstep. I think I would have like kept it under $20.
Yeah, I haven't had any success with using Facebook ads, so I think I'm not going to do that with my future marketing. Well, what advice do you have for other self-published authors from the moment they hit publish on their books?
I have a series that I'm working on, and I have a smattering of videos currently on my channel. You gotta start marketing. I would recommend a longer pre-order. If pre-order is an option for you on Amazon, I only did it for a month, and I felt like we would have benefited from a longer pre-order.
So to talk about those Facebook ads, they're changing. And I think by the time this video comes out, it will have been in effect how Facebook ads allows your targeting. Like before you could target Kindle, and now you have to be more specific on the targeting words. Now I don't know enough about Facebook ads because I haven't done them yet, but I've been reading all the changes they're putting into place, which is going to affect a lot of people and how they target their audience. So that's going to be even more with the Facebook ads. So it's interesting to know about the Facebook ads, and especially since I haven't done it yet, maybe not taking a foray into it yet. But I love to hear that you talked about your marketing series on your channel, because I've been going through those. So I know you talked about a longer pre-order. I had a long pre-order for my first book, and I would not do that again, but I was unknown. So I think, maybe from
For sure.
where you're standing, where you're not an unknown, you do have some work out there. It probably will work for you, and maybe it would work for me in the future, but I found it didn't work very well for me. And I had made the decision that I was not doing pre-orders anymore, at least not now, not until I get more established. If you could only pass on one thing to aspiring self-published writers, what is your one best tip or trick?
YouTube University, frankly. Like I said, I am working on a series of videos that kind of run you through a boot camp, a marketing boot camp of sorts, that will help you on your journey to self-publishing, both while you're writing and after you have hit the publish button. So I think, and I'm not the only one who offers such things. I would say on a lot of workshops that are offering like $250 or $500 for you to sign up for, a lot of those are very subjective and very I wouldn't. I would save your money and go to YouTube and kind of figure out what's bullshit to you and what is sound advice.
You've mentioned that you have your own marketing videos within your channel, and we should obviously recommend that everyone checks those out. But if you could distill marketing advice down to one single point, what kind of marketing do you do for your book?
So I started marketing my books during the pandemic, which means I hit social media. I have 1,000 people on Facebook, and about 700 of them actually follow me, and about 200 are actively active on my page. So if 1% actually like buys my book, then I'm happy, you know? Like that is like the super benefit of my Facebook. My Instagram is aimed towards my art, my TikTok is aimed towards my comedy and maybe some of my dance. But if I had to distill it down, I would say utilize the audience that you already have contact with. If you are unpublished and you have a solid audience or you don't have a solid audience, I recommend a newsletter to build that audience before you hit publish. Having an audience in the bag, even if you are unpublished, is like essential to your marketing plan for it to be successful, for sure.
So are tons of free options for marketing, but what was the best money you've ever spent on marketing your books?
The process of editing my book for the final stretch, yeah, getting developmental edits specifically for that, that was super helpful in kind of narrowing down my blurbs and kind of figuring out what was important about my story. And when doing that, it made it easier to market after that, for sure. So I would say also hard copy, like hardbacks. Those are absolutely great to have. One, to have one copy like hanging out on your shelf saying, "Hey, look, I did a thing." But also giving it to family members, giving it to publishers when you go to conventions, if you end up going back to conventions like after the pandemic and stuff like that. Having a hard copy available is so helpful, so very much helpful. And I would say that was the best money that I spent, was on my hard copies of Hope's Chest.
So my question is, what marketing have you tried that you never do again? And you mentioned the Facebook ads that you would never do again. Is there anything else that's ever come up that you're like, yeah, I probably won't try that?
Not so much. I would say I had done enough homework before I set out on my path that I didn't do a lot of missteps. Courtney Project was really super helpful in the journey to self-publishing. So I would say I got some really good advice about my journey, and that the Facebook ads were really the worst of it. Also, don't read your own reviews. Have a friend or someone that you trust read the reviews for you, and then deliberate on what to tell you and what not to tell you, for sure.
You mentioned a lot of different social medias, how you only use TikTok for one thing, how Instagram is another. Do you feel that social media is valuable for an author, and which one do you value the most as an author or platform?
Because my audience is the biggest on Facebook, that is my primary go-to. But if your audience is on TikTok, go with TikTok. If your audience is on Instagram, go with Instagram. Or if it's in person, go with in person. I like to have my thumbs in as many pies as possible. That way I reach as many people as possible. So while social media is super helpful and makes it so that like your readers can talk to you and you can talk to them, and you can figure out what it is they want and what it is they like and what maybe they don't like. But don't put all your money on your social media. If you can do interviews just like this one, or go to conventions or go to bookstores and see if you can do signings and stuff like that. Like, social media is such a small part of my marketing plan, but it is definitely part of my marketing plan. I would say if you can build an audience there, do it.
Which social media do you think is the best for you and why?
I think Facebook is the best for me because I am part of a few groups that are World of Darkness centric, and these are the kinds of people that would really like my work. So I can post to these groups or like target out a couple of influencers within these groups and be like, hey, I have this awesome book that I think you guys would really dig. If I can, promote myself, or if you can promote me, like that would be like super cool. So, Facebook is that for me, because that's where my audience is. Also, I used to hit their forums a lot, so I got a bunch of audience members from the White Wolf forums as well, because that's where my audience was. So, but if there are like all kinds of guides regarding like if you're between the ages of X and X, you should go to Instagram, or if you are like under the age of 21, you should go to TikTok or anything like that. I think that's generalizing. I think there's always going to be an exception, especially with TikTok expanding the way it is. The audience is getting broader and broader and broader. So, I would think Facebook works best for me, but I can't say that for everybody. I say go for the one that you are the most active on and start to network.
And I've heard a lot that also depends on your genre, which can be broken down into age groups in a lot of ways. But I do think the part that I resonate with what you say is where you feel comfortable, because some of the platforms that might be best for my genre, I don't feel comfortable there. So I do what I can do within my sphere, my world. But
Yeah, Twitter is that space for me. Like I have an if this then that account that I have posting on Twitter for me, but I am not comfortable with the audience that is there. there.
me too.
So yeah, I totally understand.
Yeah, I'm not fond of Twitter.
Yeah,
So you mentioned the Courtney Project earlier, who can be found on YouTube, and she offers so many great tips for aspiring writers and aspiring self-publishers.
she
And
really does.
it just there's so many great resources. You've mentioned, YouTube, AuthorTube as a whole, having great things to pass on. But it does seem like there's so much out there that a person who's just starting out could be hard to funnel it down. So how do you funnel it down to what's useful for you?
I already have a degree in graphic design and marketing. So it's what I learned in school from books and from art directors who like became teachers and stuff like that. So I have like already a foundation with a 4-year piece of paper saying that I know what I'm talking about, and then I expanded on my learning from there. So it was easy to tell what was like bull and what was actually like sound advice. There are a few things that Courtney says that maybe I don't agree with, but in general she's very successful and her advice is very sound. So I feel like there are people like Jenna Moreci and Kate Kavanaugh and a bunch of like popular author tubers who actually have something to say on the topic that are actually like legit people, and both that they are very honest about who they are, and also that they are honest about their experiences with publishing and with writing and with all of those things. So yeah, it is really up to you to decide what is going to work for you and what isn't. And sometimes that actually takes going and taking that advice and seeing if it works for you.
If you could only pass on one thing to aspiring self-published writers or authors, what's your best marketing tip or trick?
Other than the social media thing, even for introverts, you got to be able to talk. You got to be able to talk about your book the elevator pitch. The elevator pitch is essential for your marketing plan. If you are unfamiliar with the elevator pitch, that means if you were to go into an elevator, you have the elevator's right to tell that producer that is in the elevator exactly what your story is about, and that's your interview. That's your chance in. So you can't say, oh, my book is about a million things. Like, no, you gotta really narrow down what it's about, and really narrow down both the 3 minute, the 5 minute, the 10 minute, the half hour, like have like varying ranges of breakdowns of your story. That is like super helpful. Like query letters, surprisingly enough, even for self-published people, sometimes starting with a query letter to help, like once you've outlined and stuff like that, can help you write your story and really figure out what's important in your story and really narrow down how you would express how important your story is to the reader, really.
That's really good advice. I feel kind of called out because I don't know how to give my elevator pitch. And I'm like, what is my book about? Anyway, we're going to transition over from marketing to your writing life.
Oh.
So how much time do you spend working as an author, writing, versus all of the other things you have to do, like marketing, editing, finding beta readers, and all of that?
I have a calendar that revolves around book releases, and I have a calendar that revolves around my job as a illustrator and creative professional, if you will. I have months out of the year that are dedicated to a specific step in the self-publishing process. That includes writing during Camp Nano projects. That means editing on the off months. That means allowing 2 months for a beta reader to get back to you, for an editor to get back to you, for your street team to get back to you. Like, really be patient. Take that break from your work, especially if you're juggling more projects down the line. You can take those 2 months to work on the next project, right? You just need to like shift your focus just long enough so that you can distance yourself from the last project and start really diving into the next project. And then when you actually hear back from your betas, you can switch back to project one and implement the changes and stuff like that. And this begets a cycle that you can continue to use as the years go by.
So I was going to ask, what does your typical writing life look like? But it looks like you do everything by months and set it out. Do you
I
happen
do.
to give yourself like a word count during your months that you're writing, or do you how do you plan out how much you're going to accomplish during your writing period?
I prefer not to do word counts if I can avoid it, especially if I'm editing. Yeah, I feel like if you count your words and it motivates you, then that's great. But I feel like it just adds a pressure to my writing that stresses me out more than it does help motivate me. So word count works for some people, but I don't think it works for me. I just sit down and sprints help, like they help me get started. And then if I find that I am writing during the break times, then I will just keep writing once the stream is over. And when I get a muse like influx like that, I write it as hard as I can.
When you're writing, what comes first for you? The characters, the setting, or the plot?
The characters, for sure. I am a role player. Character design is my bread and butter. So, I create a character. I use a system that fleshes them out very fully. I figure out what they're good at. I figure out what they suck at. I figure out what they want, what they need, all of that stuff, right? And then I build the story and the plot around them. And most of the time, what happens is I build this flawed person, and there are two things that I want to do. A, I want them to grow as a person as the story progresses, and two, what's the worst possible thing that can happen? So and that's the conflict, right? So I take that character and I run them through the meat grinder that is the worst thing that can possibly happen, over and over and over again. And it's through these obstacles that they find growth. And I feel like that can be said about any human being, really. Is it is through obstacles that we gain wisdom, and that should be true for our characters as well.
Can you tell us about your experience writing Flambeau with a co-writer?
That was a dream. That was the best experience that I could have had. We got so lucky to be paired together to write a book. Like, naturally, like I keep saying, I am a role player, so writing with a co-writer is really easy for me. And I find that BC's writing is so similar to mine that melding the two together was really easy. And it's really hard to see like what scenes she wrote and what scenes I wrote, because our united voice was so strong that I feel like I got so lucky to have a partner like BC. And our time management was really good. Like, we both needed a break at the same time, so there was no fights over what happened in the book or fights over scheduling or anything like that. We had a really good time writing that book. It was really great.
How did you find BC Brown, and how did you guys decide to come together to write that book?
It's funny. Zavi Leisner and RK Gold got together and they wrote a book called Cancel Sean Boston, and they were streaming the whole process. And we, as viewers, were so impressed with their process that we were like, we should write a book together. Yeah, you and me. Like, because I wanted to do it with someone, she wanted to do it with someone, and she wrote paranormal mystery, I wrote paranormal horror, and we were just like, our genres could mesh so well that we were really fortunate. We were really fortunate.
What were the easiest and hardest parts of writing with a co-writer?
The easiest part was picking out what scenes who should write what. We kind of staggered it, so while one person was writing, the other person was editing, and while one person was, writing, the other person was editing. And we kind of like edited as we go, and that was essential to how many. I mean, we still ended up doing like 3 or 4 passes of editing on Flambeau, but I feel like the hardest part was taking the time off from the manuscript so that we didn't get burned out. When you have a really fierce schedule, like releasing, starting, like outlining in the beginning of the year and releasing at the end of the year, that is a really tight schedule to write and release a book. So the hardest part was actually separating myself from the story so that I didn't get burned out.
So, what has been your favorite work to write so far and why?
I'm gonna say Flambeau because I really tried to do the horror prose in that book and I felt like I was successful. So I just feel like I love Hope's Chest to the deep of my core. I do. I spent 11 years writing that book. But considering we wrote Flambeau in 1 year, and it had all of this wonderful prose, it had this glorious flow to it that people, including my editors, they were like, oh yeah, it took me no time to read it. I was sucked in. It was an amazing story. I think Flambeau was the most gratifying in the long run.
And I bought Flambeau, but it's on my TBR. I have a huge TBR that I have to get through, so I cannot wait to read it. I'm so impressed by what you guys did, and I love this storyline. So on the opposite side, not to say that Hope's Chest is your least favorite, but what is your least favorite work to write? And this could be like a piece that maybe you've written that you've not published.
Paranormal romance. I am working on branching out in my genre a little bit and working with another writer to write a paranormal romance for Kindle Vella, and writing this. It's a lesbian vampire story. And I have a hard time writing romance in general, where this, you know, it's got a happy ending and everything like that. So I'm determined to make a happy ending for this vampire story, like come hell or high water. So, yeah, that I kind of hide my happy romances. And I think I'm coming to a point in my career and my life where I mean, paranormal romance is wildly popular. Like, why don't I share it with the audience that is hungry for it?
What are you working on next? Is it the Damned Hitman series, or is there something else that you want to share or describe when it's coming out?
Okay, so I am working on rewriting the Damned Hitman series. That is what I'm spending my Camp Nano projects on, is doing first and second drafts of like what notes I've got on Google Docs. Thank goodness I had some stuff on Google Docs. I have intention, and kind of made the deal with my editor that there was going to be a sequel to Flambeau. I have intention of outlining it here in the near future and seeing. I hope I can make it as exciting as the first book was, maybe even more so, and work on developing the characters a bit deeper and stuff like that.
Well, you have answered all of our questions, and thank you so much for doing so. Before we wrap up, can you please tell our listeners where they can find you and where they can find your novels or books?
Oh, great. Howdy neighbors. I'm Sako Tumi. I write horror and I'm a witch and I'm a graphic designer. And sometimes I combine those three things. In fact, I do so with Hope's Chest, which can only be found on Storyteller's Vault. It's also involved in Flambeau, which can be found on Amazon. If you want to get a hold of me, I can be found on just about any social media form. You can find me as Sako Tumi or Psycho Sako.
Don't forget about YouTube.
And don't forget the YouTube channel. Yes.
And I just want to thank you again so much for joining us. This has been wonderful. And marketing is definitely where I'm weakest at, especially with social media. So, coming from an expert, coming from somebody who, like you said, has the degree, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much to our listeners and viewers as well. May 1st, we'll have Heidi Thorne, an author of over 20 self published titles, who has been there, done that with her books on business and publishing and a career that spans over 25 years of sales and advertising experience. So, goodbye, everyone.